Welcome, everyone. We want to let you know you're in the right place with Operation Parent and Dr. Crystal Collier today. We've got a fantastic webinar pieced together for you, and we just can't wait to get started. We're loading everybody in. We want to just let you know, if you're new to Operation Parent webinars, in 24 hours, you're going to get a recording of the webinar, a certificate of attendance, as well as immediately at the close of the webinar today, you will get a link to the survey. We're still loading folks in from the queue, and so we're so thankful that you've taken time out of your afternoon to spend it with us, Operation Parent and Dr. Crystal Collier. We're going to tell you a little bit about our mission. Operation Parent's mission is to love and support parents by providing real-world information, connection, and most importantly, hope. I want to let you know a couple of things about the how to participate in today's webinar. So I'm going to take you through the features of GoToWebinar, which is a system that we're using. If you'll notice up in the corner there, you're going to see an orange tab with an arrow. If you'll click on that orange tab for me, you can open up the control panel and see all the features. We're going to use the question feature. Everyone's going to be muted during the presentation today. We would love to hear from you via the question section. So that's in the middle of the control panel, and you can send questions, comments there, and know that they come to Amanda and I privately. We've got an excellent lineup of handouts for you today. We've got a PDF of the PowerPoint slides. We have a handout on behavior modification guidelines. These were provided by Dr. Collier, a communication style quiz, and information on validating and invalidating techniques. We've also provided for you a handout on Operation Parent resources that we'd love for you to check out. All of those are loaded here in GoToWebinar. You can tap on them and download them while we're here live. Or you should have also received an email this morning that had the handouts attached as well. So if you'll check in both of, if you'll download here or check your email, and then just check in all the places. It should have come right through to you, but if perhaps you're not seeing it right away, you could also check your junk folder. We want to let you know, as I mentioned at the opening, we are going to send you a recording in a follow-up email within 24 hours after completion of this webinar. And then the survey is going to pop up right at the close of the webinar. And so you all have been so generous in providing us feedback and what you love about the current webinar, what you'd like to see in future webinars. So I want to make sure that you continue to support us and love on us by using that survey. We utilize and pay attention to every single entry on that survey. It's been so helpful for us to grow the webinar program. I did also want to let you know one of the most favorite parts about our webinar is the question and answer at the end of the webinar, and so that is also going to be happening. So we know that you might not be able to stay on for the entire amount. Hopefully that you can, but if you have to miss some of it, you will be able to catch the recording. So I want to take a couple minutes and let you know about our next webinar. So April 11th, Vaping and Marijuana, What Parents Must Know. And our guest presenter is Dr. Aaron Weiner, who many of you have possibly seen his presentations in the past. So he's coming back to join us and really digging deep on what is happening with teens' behaviors in terms of vaping as well as with marijuana. And so that is another action-packed webinar with a lot of detail in it and a lot of things that parents and those helping teens out in the community must know. So I hope that you'll go ahead and sign up. I will let you know that seats for that webinar are going pretty quickly. So if you're interested in joining us for that, you may want to go ahead and sign up today. So let me tell you a bit about Crystal Collier. I'm hoping that many of you also recognize her from if you're joining us again. If you're new, you're going to love her dynamic presentation style and all the information that she's packed for us in the next 55 plus minutes. She is a therapist, a researcher, an educator. She's an amazing human being. She's been working with adolescents and adults suffering from mental illness, behavioral problems, and substance use disorders since 1991. She has intense expertise in studying the adolescent brain development and overlaying prevention and parent coaching and helping those that are struggling with addiction. She's done incredible work. We are so thankful to have her as a friend of Operation Parent. I wanted to let you know, if you are new and you haven't had a chance to see her two past webinars, you can go up to the resource section on our website, go down to webinars, and then just scroll down a little bit past the webinar registration area, and you'll see two of her other fantastic webinars. One was entitled The Effects of Technology on Brain Development, and then the second one was Your Teen's Brain and the Link to Risky Behavior. As you start to hear from her today, you're going to want to hear more about what she's learned and studied along the way, so feel free to tap on those past webinars as well. So Dr. Collier, thank you so much for being with us today. We are honored.
You got it. Thank you so much. You said the sweetest things. I really appreciate it.
We feel
Okay.
so lucky.
Definitely. And I just want to share with you guys, you may hear a little banging. I've got carpet layers here. There was a scheduling confusion with my husband and I. My studio is here at home. And right above me, I've got some people laying brand new carpet. But Michelle is so positive. She said, but guess what? When you're done with the webinar, you'll be able to go to enjoy your new carpet. So, but if you guys hear that, please know that's what's going on, that I'm all right. So, all right, you guys, I'm so excited to be here today to talk to you about this particular topic. And I'm going to start to jump ahead. My book is called The Neuro Whereabouts Guide. It's available on Amazon in English and in Spanish. And I want you guys to bookmark my author page on Amazon so you'll get some information when I publish something new. I have a new book called Foo Mapping Family of Origin Workbook, and I do have a new kids version of the Neuro Whereabouts Guide coming out, a teen version. I've got some teen interns helping me write it, and I have a kids book coming out for K through 2, which will be a brain series to teach parents or teach kids that within the K through 5 really age group of what their brain is and how to protect it and set boundaries, saying no, things like that. So those are all coming out. Now today, we're going to talk a little bit about brain development, but what our goal is today is to teach you the basics of behavior modification. And if you have questions, please feel free to pop those in. They'll let me know what's going on. And then I've got, toward the end, we'll talk about like the best communication skills, the styles, and the things that parents do that can sabotage a good behavior modification contract. Okay, so to get started, if you know my work, you know that this is my favorite brain study, published in 1999, where they show healthy kids growing up. And because of these beautiful functional MRI studies, we now know that it's the prefrontal cortex, the frontal lobe in the brain where our adult brain, our executive functioning skills are growing and developing. And it relies on the brain's rule, use it or lose it. So always teach kids that this is your adult part of the brain and that your skills grow based upon the brain's rule. What's the brain's rule? Use it or lose it. What are you using? Hopefully that you don't lose are these, the executive functioning skills. So executive functioning skills are really your basic skills of thinking, feeling, and doing in the world. And they grow according to the 2 phases of brain development. First phase, from birth all the way up to about 11 or 12, when we grow lower level executive functioning skills. Then when puberty kicks in, it kicks in the second stage of brain development, and that's when these higher level executive functioning skills kick in. Now, as a therapist, I see a lot of kids who struggle with some of these over here on the right. Well, I see a lot of kids who struggle with all of them in different ways, but a lot of times I see kids who are acting out with substances, who are being disrespectful, who are not following the rules, who are not doing their homework. So these are the kind of things that we're going to talk about shaping today. We also want to make sure we think about too much technology use, the different things that might happen at home that could derail a kid from successfully developing a healthy brain. And so some of these things that are bold in orange are the ones that we really want to make sure that we use brain-based praise and watch to see what our kids, when our kids are doing some of these things, and make sure that we praise them for using good impulse control. Being able to say, I love how you made that decision and solved that problem. Tell me the process that your brain went through. Oh my gosh, I love your judgment. Really good job. And being able to say, I really appreciate you regulating your emotion today. A couple weeks ago, that would have been difficult for you, but today you're doing an awesome job. This is what I mean by brain-based praise. Literally memorizing these executive functioning skills and being able to watch to see when your kids are engaging in those things, and then making sure that you add praise to that. Because when you add praise, the behavior goes up. But here's what happens. Our kids start growing up and they move into the second stage of brain development, and we praise less. And a lot of the times it's because we are worried more often. We feel more fearful about what's happening in their world and their environment. And so we lecture a little bit more during this phase, which is the opposite way we want to go. So let's jump into some information about risky behavior and what to expect. So it's very important that you remember that your child's brain is growing and developing at the pace that it is, not the pace that you want or maybe need it to. Now, I studied Kohlberg stages of moral development, and that's what you're seeing here in the pyramid. And I added the brain slides right next to the stages so you could see when different things come online. Now, what you see when kids are growing and developing is that they start making decisions based upon morals and values much later than we wish they would. When we start off in life, when we're little kids, we do things because we want to, and if we can avoid punishment and get away with it, we're going to do it. That doesn't mean that we don't have morals and values yet. It just means they haven't begun to develop because our brain is still in the very, very early stages of brain development. Now, when we get to about age 8, 9, 10, we start shifting into a new stage of brain development. We know what the rules are, and we know when it's important to follow them, but we still will get away with, if we can get away with it, we will do it, because we do a lot of things based upon self-interest. We're just learning how to think about others before we act, which is a higher level executive functioning skill called empathy that doesn't actually start to really come online and guide our thoughts until that second stage of brain development. And as you can see, as we continue to go up into these stages, by age 16, 17, 18, we're still not making all of our decisions based upon morals and values. We're making them based upon, that's what the law is, some very concrete decision making. But then we get about 19, 20, 21, and what we see is that we start making decisions based upon something called social contract. That means if you're nice to me, I'll be nice to you. There's a reciprocal relationship, some mutual respect that goes on. And then as we get into higher level stages of brain development, we start making decisions based upon what the right thing to do is. Now, that doesn't mean we can't make decisions like that when we're younger, but that just means it's probably not the first thing kids are going to think of when to do something or when not to do something. And that's where you come in with shaping their behavior. So I'm going to give you a really cute but funny, although a scary example of how this worked out in a session with a client of mine. So I had a couple parents come to see me, and they drug their 14-year-old boy with them, and they were upset because he was such a good kid, followed rules, made all A's, was really doing well, and they decided to go out of town for a couple weeks, and they had some people that would come and watch in him, but they were like, you'll be okay, we trust you, you're such a good kid. And his parents really were the guiding influence for him to make his initial decisions. But when his best friend said, oh, but so-and-so really likes you, and we could just invite them over, your parents will never know, the scales started to tip, unfortunately. And then when his best friend said, oh, I know somebody who could get some marijuana. We've never done that before. We got to do that. That's part of what growing up is about. And my brother could bring over alcohol. Well, I think you guys are knowing where this is going. He ended up tipping the scales in the favor of all of these high-risk behavior and had a pretty big party. Parents had to come back from Europe. All of that happened. Here's the interesting part. 2 years later, the parents decided to go on another trip and said, you were grounded for 3 months. Your life was miserable. You probably learned your lesson. He said, I'll never do that again. And so they left him to his own devices at home with the neighbor watching. And guess what he did? He made it to almost the very last weekend and had another party. And the same thing happened. He had a little bit more brain development, but he had some friends who were really influencing him to make this decision. And so what that tells me is that we have a normal kid whose brain is normally developing, but he just wasn't ready for that much responsibility even later at age 16. Remember, at 14 years old, you've only got right about 30% of your adult brain. By the time you're 16, you got about 45%. And remember, that's when we give them a license to drive with half a brain. So we definitely don't want to give kids that much responsibility without verifying that they're following the rules. So this is when we bring in the family code, which is a simple set of rules that your entire family lives by. You repeat it often, and each member of the family is held accountable for that or to it. So let me share with you what my family code is. Here's the Collier family code. In our family, we treat others with kindness, compassion, and respect on and offline. We are upstanders. We do not ever use drugs and only use alcohol when we're 21. What I want you guys to do is create a family code. And I've got some of the steps that you can use later on in this presentation, and they're also in my book. You can even do this in a community center, a church, or at a school. I've done this activity many times out in the world, and it's really fun, starting at about age 7 all the way up, including kids even to the age of college age. Once you have this down and everybody has been given an opportunity to participate in it, then what you do is you put it up on the wall. and you use this code once in a while, every few weeks, every month or so, reminding your kids, hey, this is our family code. I want you to be a good representation, a representative of our family code. And so when they go out, remember the family code. Hey, what's the family code? And once your kids say things like, oh my God, Dad, the family code is, that should be music to your ears. Okay. All right. So now we're going to jump into really understanding your role as you move into parenting a teenager. The first half of brain development, birth to about age 12. Your role is a director. You direct the show, where to go, what to do. But once their brain moves into that second phase of brain development, it's important to move into the trainer role. Now you are training a brain to grow up and be fully self-supporting and leave your home, but be able not to boomerang back, but to stay and maintain healthy adult living. And so you've got to understand what's happening in the brain that makes this job difficult. And so you could probably see all these angry teenagers. What's going on there? This has a lot to do with two little teeny tiny organelles in the limbic system. Remember, the limbic system is the fight or flight part of the brain, and you can see all these little teeny tiny organelles deep inside your brain that make up that part, the limbic system. But there are two little tiny organelles inside the limbic system that come fully online by the time we're about 11, 12. So the first one is the nucleus accumbens, which you can see right about there, this little bubble that looks like this little teeny tiny organ inside of your brain. It's in charge of making dopamine. It seeks out novelty, new things. And then, of course, it gives you a big hit of dopamine whenever you engage in those new things. Remember that adolescents are more sensitive to novel information. And so they're going to start seeking it out, especially when the nucleus accumbens fully comes online. Now, what also is fully developed by age 11, 12 is the amygdala, which is down here at the very base of the limbic system. That is the watchdog of the entire limbic system. It's the part of the brain that scans the environment for things that are good for your survival, things that are bad for your survival, and it turns on a warning system when there's something bad for you. It turns on a warning system when there's something good for you, and it gives you an emotional reaction. Either be happy about it and move toward it, or be afraid of it, fight, flight, freeze, or befriend it. And so your amygdala comes online at 11, 12. Okay, so you might be wondering, why on earth did the universe, did our higher power create these two little organelles coming online right at this time when life and life's difficulties are getting bigger, social issues are getting better, there's more things for them to get in danger with? Well, the idea here is that kids are learning who they are. They're moving into a wonderful opportunity, the phase of neurodevelopment for creating their identity. Now, what do they have to do to be able to do that? Well, they have to break away from the family. They have to move away to start individuating. And so that's when you become uncool, and they want you to drop them off down the street from their school. And they, right, you remember those painful times when your kid starts side hugging you and you're like, wait, you used to cuddle on my lap. What happened? Yep, they're individuating. So they have to break away from us. But they also have to go out there and try on all kinds of new things to figure out, okay, what fits me the best? And that's where the nucleus accumbens comes in, is that they're prime and ready to go do all those things. Unfortunately, there's a lot of negative things out in the world that they could try on. And so we want to be prepared for these parts of the brain to come online. What is critical, parents? You guys got to remember, these are normal and healthy. Once your kid starts being irritable, cranky, that snark that you get, the irrational arguments, those all signal, oh, my child is developing normally. So celebrate those. And also, you don't have to tolerate disrespect and not following the rules. that there's a certain amount of snark that you can let go as long as they're within certain parameters. Okay, what are those parameters? So let's talk about it. So this is one of my favorite people in history. If you ever took a psychology 101 class, you would have learned about this dude. His name is B.F. Skinner. He is the father of modern behaviorism. And what I'm going to teach you guys today is his theory of why humans do things for rewards and to avoid consequences, otherwise as operant behavior principles. What that means is, what does your behavior operate for? And so operant behavioral principles, this is going to be your new theory. And I want you to put on your white lab coat, and I want you to imagine that you are training a teenager. But we're going to describe the process is exactly the same way that I learned how to do it, which is, okay, there we go. Turn off. I've got a warning here. I think we're okay. You guys let me know if there's a problem. Okay, but it looks like that I'm still connected to you guys. Everything okay? Amanda, could you chime in and let me know?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, good, good, good. All right, keep going. So what we're going to do is teach you how to shape behavior according to the theory of operant behavioral principles. And I just want to share the story of how I learned how to do it. And that was by training my own lab rat, who looked just like this. Of course, all white rats look very similar. And so this wasn't actually her, but looked just like her. And I named my rat Anna. She was assigned to me in Rat Lab back in 1991 at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. And I got to go in and visit her in the lab. She was kept in this little rat house. And she was given food and water and a nice little comfy bed. And then I got assigned to me a Skinner box, which is one of those. I'll actually toggle back here. You can see B.F. Skinner actually has a rat inside a Skinner box. And so let me show you kind of the inside of what it looks like. So when you put your rat into a Skinner box, they have a food receptacle, a bar right above it. They have a water spout, and there's all kinds of other things that you can put inside of it. Most of the time, there are also electrodes on the bottom for shocking a rat for punishment. Now, we never did that, which was really good. I don't think I could have stomached doing that to a rat. But it's important to remember that punishment, which is what those electrodes are all about, shapes behavior, unfortunately, pretty well. We're going to talk about that in just a second. So I actually turned them on and touched them so I could feel what it feels like. And it was uncomfortable, but we didn't actually use the electrodes. We used the food receptacle, the bar. We had a little yellow dot that was attached to one side of the Skinner box, and then this little trapeze for her to put her head inside on the other side. Now, when I got my syllabus, quite interesting. Here is what it said. It said that my job as a beginning psychology student was to teach my rat how to press the bar 50 times, touch her nose on a dot, and put her head through a trapeze, all for one sugar pellet. And I thought, okay, all right, how do I do this? Now, this is exactly what my Skinner box looked like. I had a this receptacle here that's empty. It actually was full of sugar pellets, which is what my rat, Anna, would work really, really hard for. And the issue, though, is we have to make sure that she's motivated, just like we do with humans. And so we know that what motivates a rat is food. So she was on half rations most of the time. And that kept her in a really hungry state, so that when I put her into the Skinner box, she would work pretty hard for sugar. But it's important to remember, You've got to figure out what your child or teenager will work hard for. Some kids, most kids, will work really hard for their cell phones if they have them, their computers, peer privileges, different activities, video games. We have some kids, though, who don't care about some of those things. Maybe that they really love reading new books, or they have different interests that they will work hard for. We have some kids who dig in so hard, they're like, I don't care about any of that stuff. So with those kids, we may even have to use things like a door for privacy, or really cool shoes for recreation. Of course, you want to give them all of the basic things that they need for survival. We don't want to neglect kids in any way, shape, or form. But if you have a kiddo who is refusing to follow rules, you may have to take off their door and let them know, in order to earn your privacy, you have to follow these particular rules. So we will talk about all the different levels. What I suggest that you do is take a piece of paper and write down with your partner, if you're working with a parent partner, what your partner thinks. You can get your kids' information too and influence. What will you work really hard for? A lot of times parents will add something that the child won't work hard for, but they try to entice them. Well, if you do that, you can earn this. But if this is not something that they will work hard for, we don't put it into our behavior modification contract. Now, the last thing I'll say here is it's also important to remember praise. Like I said, it's one of the things that goes down in high school, and that is a huge sadness for me, because even though teenagers don't seem to really care about your praise and what you think or what you say, they may even tell you that normally, unfortunately, it's really important to remember that they still want it and they really do need it. They need to hear it. They may not react like they did when they were younger, but your praise is really key and important. So you want to keep up that ratio. Okay, so here is some comic relief, because I know you're thinking, I don't know how to get my kid to do this. And that is very, very common. So this kind of illustrates that conundrum. You've got the teenage rat there, which I think is so funny because it looks like they have an earring like some kids want to get, but it's really just one of the lab tags. And then you've got the scientist rat who said, what is wrong with you? Nothing motivates you, not pellets, not shacks, not cheese. I need your participation for this experiment to work. And the teenage rat says, dude, I'm holding out for the electrodes implanted in the pleasure centers of my brain. And if you have a teenager that is very unmotivated, you get this. Unfortunately, you live the pain of this as well. So let's talk about what your tools are going to be. Very important to remember that they are in order of effectiveness, long-term speaking. So positive reinforcement. B.F. Skinner said that humans and animals will work really hard for something that reinforces them in a positive way. It is the most powerful tool that you have. So what you want to do when you start writing a behavior contract is you don't want to say, don't do this. You want to write it in a positive term. You want to say, be sober, follow the rules, be respectful. Those are the ways that you want to write the behavioral expectations, because the first thing you want in your next column is your reward. What you will get positively reinforced for doing the expected behavior. Now, your second most powerful tool is negative reinforcement. Now, this is when you actually lose the positive reinforcer, right? So maybe you get grounded and all those positive reinforcers go away. In order to keep all of your positive reinforcers, you're going to work really hard and do those expected behaviors, but the consequences are your negative reinforcement. Now, remember, you guys, you're not making up like a simulation at home. You're really literally using life's consequences, because if I do a really good job, I earn my paycheck. If I don't do a really good job, I lose my paycheck. It is the exact same thing at home. It's important to remember and to tell kids that if you follow the rules, if you are respectful, if you do all the things that you're supposed to do, you earn all of these things. Now, part of the issue I see is that kids think they're entitled to all of those things. You're like, it's my cell phone. You can't take it away. And you're thinking, hold on, kid. I'm the one who pays for it. What are you talking about? If we've got that kind of entitlement going on, this process of shaping behavior is going to be very difficult, but it's doable. We'll talk about that. Now, your third most powerful tool, although it is the least effective, is punishment. Now, a lot of times kids will say, why are you punishing me? And it's really important to remember that a punishment is giving someone an aversive stimulus, like a slap or a spank or yelling. These are all aversive stimuli. And we actually will shape behavior with these things very effectively, unfortunately. You know that you will avoid being yelled at. You will avoid getting a spanking really effectively. But as soon as the person who's yelling, or as soon as the person who's spanking goes away, the behavior has a really quick bounce back effect, because we're really avoiding that person. We're not learning how to earn rewards and keep from having to face consequences. So really important that you remember that punishment is not the word that you want to let your kids use. When they say, why are you punishing me? It's important to say, dude, I don't know what you're talking about, because you earned the consequence. So change your language. We all earn rewards and we all earn consequences. It's not me doing this to you, kiddo. It's not that you're the victim of a mean parent and a mean world. It's that you got to own your own behavior and be accountable for what you earn, rewards, and consequences. Okay, now let's talk about what shaping is. Now, shaping is really the systematic shaping of different behaviors. Now, if you've ever taught a kid how to tie their shoelaces, you know that can be really frustrating because there are many steps. And so how you shape, right? The first thing that you do is you teach them how to cross it. Then you teach them how to go under and tie the knot first. Those are the different steps that you would go through in shaping behavior. It requires patience and consistency. So let me share with you how I shaped Anna's behavior. The first thing I did during my spring semester of that year in 1991, as I went and got Anna out of her cage and I put her into my Skinner box. I started to get to know her so she would feel comfortable with me, and I held her for a little bit, and then I put her in and I grabbed my little clicker that allows me to deliver the sugar pellets to her, and I waited. I watched and waited. Anna would sniff around the whole box, and then she'd stop and clean herself and sniff some more and clean herself some more. And what I started to do was get her to move over closer to the bar. So as soon as she moved toward the bar, I gave her, ding, a sugar pellet. Now, she would hear the pellet, hit the receptacle, smell it, walk over, and eat it. Then I waited for her to walk away. And as she was going more toward coming back to the pellet or to the receptacle, ding, gave her another sugar pellet. So that she started to learn she needed to hang out near the bar much, much more than any other part of the cage. Now, this was going great. After about 3 days, she's hanging out with me on the right side. It was great. But one day I brought her in and she had eaten lunch later. So she had her half rations early. So she wasn't very hungry. So she was hanging out way on the other side, just lollygagging around and cleaning herself. I was so frustrated. I'm thinking, Anna, don't you realize I have a 2-hour lab? Like, we got to get working. And I thought, if I just give her a sugar pellet, she'll hear it and she'll come over here. Now, why is that a bad idea? That is a bad idea because whatever I reinforce her for doing is what she's going to keep doing. So if I reinforce her for being over there on that side of the cage, she's going to get confused. Wait, thought you wanted me to be over here. So it's really important to be consistent and patiently wait for the behavior that you want to see. Now, as soon as she started hanging out on that side again, the very next week, things started really popping. One day she puts a little paw on the bar. I was so excited. So now I cannot reinforce her for just hanging out on that side of the cage. I can only reinforce her for the next step up, which is paw on bar. So I had to wait and wait and wait again. That was frustrating, but I did. I waited. She put a paw on the bar, immediately reinforced her. You could see the little light bulb going off over her little rat brain. Oh, I need to do this. Ding, ding, ding. One day she pressed the bar, not hard enough to fully deploy it, but she pressed it. Now I can no longer shape for just paw on bar. I can only shape for bar press. So again, I had to wait and wait and wait. She puts a paw up there a lot, but finally she presses again. The little light bulb goes off and she's pressing, pressing, pressing. I go up the steps, keep reinforcing more and more approximate behavior. And then one day she presses the bar all by herself. Now I have to go up a stair. I can't reinforce for half bar press, only for full bar press. But it was really cool. She learned that so quick. Her learning curve started going up and up and up. And then I, on the little dial on the Skinner box, I went from 1 to 2. And so now the self-delivering mechanism kicks in. And if she presses the bar twice, she gets to earn a pellet. But remember, she was only doing it once. So she goes up and presses, looks, nothing comes out. Goes up and presses, looks, nothing comes out. She gets upset and she bam, bam, presses twice. Ding, it came out. She's learning quicker and quicker. So I go from 2 to 4 to 8 to 16. And finally, Anna just learns she's got to stand there and press the bar until something comes out. Then I started to shape her for the nose on the trapeze and the head, or the nose on the dot, the head in the trapeze. And finally, by the very 2 weeks before semester was over, she does the whole thing for 1 pellet. I was so proud of her and me. I went and grabbed my professor and I showed him, and he said, "That is great. You've got wonderful success, but you've got one more thing to do that's on the syllabus. Now, if you want to stop here, you can get an A minus. But if you want the full A, you're going to have to do the last thing on the syllabus." So I run and go get the paper and I look, I have to do one more thing. I have to extinguish the behavior. I have to teach Anna to stop doing everything I just taught her to do. Ugh. How do you teach a rat to stop doing what you just taught her to do? Wow. Yeah, I think you guys get it. You have to stop giving them sugar pellets. So I'm already feeling like a bad rat mom because I'm giving her half rations, and now I have to take away all the sugar. So the next week, Monday, I put her in the box. She looks around, she presses the bar, nose, head, waits for sugar. Presses the bar, nose, head. Oh my God, she's doing the whole routine. Nothing is happening. After about 2 hours of that, this is what she looked like. She was a very angry rat. Her little ears were red. She was so upset. What's happening? Extinction, not just what happened to the dinosaurs. This happens to us all the time. When we don't get something that we're expecting to get, we may still end up doing the same behavior. If you guys have ever seen that old classic movie, Office Space, when they take away the guy's paycheck, he still keeps going to work expecting to get the reward. Extinction is not taking place for, I believe you have my stapler guy. If you haven't seen that movie, classic, I encourage you to watch it. But it's important to remember that when humans go through this, right? If you think about when you're used to getting a reward and the reward goes away, you can get pretty upset and have what we call an extinction burst. otherwise known as a temper tantrum. Now here's what happened. I brought Anna in, and you can see like on this graph, right about at the 10 mark line, she does the behavior more and more and more. On Friday of the first week, she's doing the behavior the whole entire 2 hours. And I felt so bad because she's hungry, there's no sugar. And I thought, oh, we're about to go into the weekend. Maybe if I just give her a couple pellets, just to tide her over. I mean, her rat friends are like having a party. You guys are feeling me, right? Yeah, okay. We want to give in sometimes when things are going on in the world. And we think, well, they don't deserve to be completely grounded. It's so important to be consistent. And here's why. I didn't do it. If I had done it, I would have been teaching Anna that she not only had to do the routine once, but she had to do it the 1,000 times that she did it over that one whole week. I would actually be making the behavior worse. I would teach her the wrong thing to do. So I didn't do it. I came in on Monday, she did it again, Tuesday, Wednesday, she kept doing it. But on Thursday, I have literally 2 days before the semester is over to earn an A. And I'm like, come on, Anna. I put her in the box. On Thursday morning, she looks up at me, she looks at the bar, she looks at the dot, she looks at the trapeze, and she starts cleaning herself. Woohoo! She extinguished the behavior. So what you see on this graph is at the point where it peaks, that would have been that Thursday, and it would have gone down. But here's the deal. If I had given in at week 1, what I would have done to the extinction burst is doubled it. Instead of having 2 weeks of an extinction burst here, I would have had 4 weeks of trying to get rid of the behavior. This is so very important for parents to know that when you put a contract, when you say you're grounded for X amount of days, it is critical that you follow through with that. That's why it's important not to say things like you're grounded for the rest of your life, because obviously you're not going to be able to follow through with that. But if you say a month, it's important that they are grounded for the entire month, that they lose their rewards, and that the consequence actually sticks. Or if not, you're teaching them not only that you're not serious, that you don't care enough to follow through, but that they can also manipulate you to get out of things. And you're also lengthening the extinction burst. And so they'll have more temper tantrums, they'll manipulate you in more savvy ways, they'll play on your heartstrings, they'll know what to say. Those are all the things that we could see in an extinction burst. I remember seeing a Dr. Phil show once, and him and his wife, their son was having a temper tantrum, and they couldn't handle listening to him. So they both went outside and looked in from the window until he got quiet, and then they came back into the house. And so whatever you have to do to get through your extinction burst is key. So let's talk about some of your tools. Okay. Your behavioral contract needs to be simple. I remember when I first started out in therapy, I was working at a treatment center, and one of the dads said, oh, don't worry, I'll put together a behavior contract. And he came back in and he had a 4-page document that all had subsections. No. We want it to be simple. So you guys have a couple of templates for me. It looks like this. Make sure that if it's just one behavior that you want to shape, that's all that goes on your behavior contract. You don't need to put 2 or 3, but I would not go above that. And you want to be vague when you do this. So here's an example of one that I use with my clients who are teenagers who have ended up using high-risk behavior. The first thing on my contracts is usually be sober. The second thing is follow the rules. And then the third thing, we are going to either pick be respectful or get good grades, depending upon what you're doing. Now, here's what's critical. Your kids know the rules. You don't have to list them all here. Your kids know what being sober means because you're going to have a conversation about no intoxicants in your body. Your kids know what good grades are when you say, we don't expect you to be perfect and make all A's, but we do think you can make all A's and B's, maybe one C, and that's it. Once you set the bar, then it stays set. But you also want to make sure that you don't put all of the specifics, because when you put the specifics, you set yourself up for your kid figuring out a loophole around that specific thing. So when you say generally, we expect you to follow the rules, and tell me, kid, what are the rules? You make sure that you've heard them say it, that they know what they are. Then when they break a rule, you can use the rewards and consequences at your discretion. Okay, so if they F-bomb you, which is definitely disrespectful, they can lose their cell phone for 24 hours. If they actually yell at you for an hour with 10 F-bombs, then you get to say, kiddo, you have earned a loss of your cell phone for 5 days. That is why it's important to be vague in the expected behavior column. Very simple and very brief. Then, as you can see in the reward section, you list the things that they will work for, and you list the same exact things. In the consequences column, you're going to just bring that thing over and put loss of. Now, in this top one, since I work with a lot of kids who have substance use issues, what I always recommend is that if a child pops positive on a drug test or parents find out they're using again, that they also come in for an immediate family session to discuss what happened, because we may need to make a recommendation for a higher level of care. But please make sure that you use these contracts. If you've got a kiddo who's using too much video game time, then you can put on your behavior contract, follow the rules about video games, and put the rewards and the consequences together just like that. It could literally be one row with 3 columns, depending upon what you want to shape. But if you've got a kiddo who's lying, you don't want to say, don't lie. Remember, in your behavior, expected behavior column, you're going to put the behavior you want to see so that you can reward it. So that would be honest. Okay, now let's talk about some tools that make this critical. Consistency. You and your parenting partner need to be on the same page. Now, let me just say this one caveat. If you're divorced and your parenting partner is not a good collaborative parent with you, you can't control what's happening in that house, but you can call and say, our child earned this consequence because of this behavior. I would appreciate it if that consequence would stick at your home this weekend, but you can't control whether that happens or not. That does make extinction bursts longer, but kids learn who they can manipulate and who they can't. In the long run, the parents that are the most consistent usually have the best relationship with kids later on. Unfortunately, when there's another parent who's undermining, that may put a strain on the parent who is more of the disciplinarian. Stick to it. Consistency is vital. What we don't want to do is set up a Karpman triangle, which is what you see here. In a triangulated relationship, there's always somebody who's the bad guy, the persecutor. You never let me do that. You always take away that positive, blah, 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 whatever that is. But then you have a parent maybe who's a rescuer who says, oh, don't worry, when you're at my house, I'll let you go to this. Or, well, okay, you've been so good this week, you don't have to do that consequence. That's the rescuer. The unfortunate part about this type of relationship is that when you have a enabler, a rescuer, a bad guy, a persecutor that are not on the same page, the child is in the role of victim. They immediately get put into this role. And the negative thing here is that that role is blameless. Kids who get stuck in this victim role, they can point the finger at dad, well, you never let me do this. And they can point the finger at mom and say, and you never rescue me from him. That is an unaccountable kid who can grow up with a victim mentality and blame everybody for their problems instead of being accountable for earning rewards and consequences. So what I suggest is that you parent from a T. T means parent number one and parent number two always communicate with each other first, then they deliver the message to the kiddo. You're on the same page. And if you are not on the same page, if one is more authoritarian and one is more permissive, if you guys learn how to negotiate, then you end up being the perfect parent and delivering the information to the kiddo. It's so important to say to kids, I don't talk about what's going on with parenting with just kids alone. We've got to wait and talk to your dad. Or dad says, I got to wait and talk to your mom. We can't make this decision together. Or get your mom on the phone for me so I can talk to her about this. You don't have to go above and beyond. If your kid wants to go do something, you can say, hey, get me the information. I need that parent's name, address, phone number. Make sure that you get their frontal lobe active and working for you and for them if they want to earn those rewards. Parenting from a T takes a lot of work, but it is so worth it. And then you don't have to make spontaneous decisions on the spot when you feel manipulated. You can wait until you are calmer and make a better decision. Okay. So I put a lot of these tools in my parent guide, the Neuro Whereabouts Guide. And so we're going to go over a few of these, which are really relevant to shaping behavior modification. So the first one is definitely, you got to make sure that your kids know what the rules are about all of these risky behaviors. I researched 18 different risky behavior and how they affect the brain to put them in the book. I even put a graph for them so you know when they start. And that means you got to know when to have your conversation. And if you go, oh my God, what do I say? I put the scripts in the book for you. Helped you build executive functioning skills and also what to say before that behavior becomes an issue in your child's life. Now, remember, it may never become an issue, but they need to have that conversation with you so they know ahead of time what your expected behavior of them is. Remember, kids are not going to follow those all the time. That's the whole point of behavior modification. It's not to be perfect. It's to actually help them make progress in growing their brain and healthy development. Okay, so the family code. This is the activities that you do. You meet together as a family. Everybody contributes. The first thing you do is you brainstorm values. You make a list. It's fun to ask kids to Google what are family values. And then you can read a whole list of them and pick out 2 or 3 that really, really mean something to your family. Then you're going to write a few sentences about the no's in your family. What are the no's? No drugs, no alcohol, nothing that hurts our brain too much technology use or too much video game time, whatever it is. And then you can combine those and have your kids create a graphic. I had a dad who took his family's really cool sketch, coat of arms from that family, and they put it, had another little girl, she drew this really beautiful tree. Everybody had a leaf with a name on it, and in the trunk was their family code. Put that up. It doesn't have to be framed, but it can be on the fridge. And then what you do is you use that in your family dinners to remind kids of what the expected behavior is. Now, a lot of times kids work very, very hard for technology. And many parents ask me, when should my child get a smartphone? And here's my answer, is that they should get one when their frontal lobe is smart enough to use it responsibly. Now, when is that? There's a great website called Wait Until 8th, and you can team up with your kids, friends, parents, and everybody wait as long as you possibly can to give a kid a smartphone. Now, remember, I really recommend that their first phone is a dumb phone. Apple has a really great phone for that. It's called No Phone. It's got basics, kid phones that only dial 1 or 2 numbers. Remember, I was seeing a 14-year-old yesterday who figured out how to get around the password. So you got to make sure that they know when they earn technology, they have to follow the rules. You can't put anything on it without permission. They can't get into it. As soon as they abuse it, they should lose it. And that's great, because the longer they don't have a phone, the more communication skills, the more leadership skills, the more skills their brain is going to grow for that. We got to be very careful about social media. So sometimes parents will use social media apps as rewards, which is important because many kids today communicate through Snapchat, through Instagram, and through watch TikTok. Those necessarily aren't bad rewards to use, but it should be only developmentally appropriate, and you have to monitor. So as soon as kids are out there on the World Wide Web, you need to have monitoring software, things like Bark, that make sure that they are representing their family code when they're on social media. Remember that all of these things are negative things that could reach them through that. My adults and my kids who engage in substance use, the only way that they get drugs today is through Snapchat. So it's very, very important that you remember, once they have access to these, they have potentially access to a lot of negative things. Also important to remember that when you use video games as a reward, which is a really good reward if they'll work for it, that you want to make sure that they're using games that are not first-person shooter, that they know not to buy things like things like that are in boxes. Oh God, what are those called? I forgot. I'll think of it in a second. But we want to make sure that they don't buy anything extra on the game that they're not supposed to, that they don't look in loot boxes or buy a bunch of loot boxes, because it's very much like gambling. And that they only use at certain specific times. And you can watch my technology video or look in the book for those specific times for different ages of how much kids should earn. It's also important that when they earn technology like this, that you go through a contract and set up expectations that they know when they're online, they represent the family code. They can't bully people. They can't give out personal information. They have to be aware of scams. They can never game for more than 2 to 3 hours consecutively at a time, because that's what grows neuronal structure. Once they earn that time, they need to get off. And if they can't get off the first or second time asked, they should lose the privilege of having that. Now, if you have kids that have substance use or behavioral problems like extreme disrespect, it's important to remember that you have to drug test kids. I've got some information in the tools section of my book about where and what kind of drug test to get and how frequently to do it and what to say to your kids when they do it. But if they're using substances, basically wanting to tell kids, if my job is to protect your frontal lobe development, and if you're choosing not to protect it from drugs and alcohol, which shut it off, I have to step in and protect it for you. And so you're going to earn all of your privileges if you keep your brain clean and sober and your frontal lobe on and growing. Now, if you have kids that have disrespect problems, yelling, arguing, you're going to want to use a lot of cell phone if they're old enough for that, or gaming or fun privileges to make sure, like timeouts, things like that for the little ones. But you want to make sure that the timing is developmentally appropriate for them. And so, you know, a little kid cannot have a consequence that lasts 7 days. It may be 2 hours of timeout time away from all of the fun things that they love to do. We don't want to take away sports. We don't want to take away fun activities. We don't want to take away books that have homework included in them. I had a kiddo once, the only thing he would work for was Harry Potter books. And so that's what he earned in his behavior contract. We didn't take away all books, just recreational reading, which was really sad, but that was the only thing that he would work really, really hard for. Now, in the book, I have a couple of contracts. Please know I spent a lot of time creating these to make sure that everything was in them that you needed, but you can also add whatever you want. But it's important when they earn privileges like technology that they use it only as a representative of your family code. And that a couple of these things here, you know, that they don't give out their passwords, that they don't bully with it, they don't use it behind closed doors. And of course, there's the driving contract as well. Now, in my book, I have the talks for all 18 behaviors, and I try to make them fun and developmentally appropriate, because sometimes these things are not easy to talk about with your kids. I also have a behavior modification contract. There's a sample in there, and there's also a blank one for you. We've got some blank ones for you too if you watched this presentation. But please remember that when you're shaping human and animal behavior, it is really critical to be consistent and to make sure that you are patient. When your kid is showing an extinction burst, every kid looks differently. Some kids yell and scream. Some kids say, I'm going to go kill myself. Some kids pout and brood. Whatever it is, that you set firm limits about it and that you say, this behavior is not okay. As soon as you stop, that's when you will be able to earn your rewards back. Now, a little caveat about that. If kids say, I'm going to go kill myself if you take away my video game, it is very important that you stop and say, it is never okay to threaten hurting yourself, ever. If you continue to threaten, we may have to take you to a therapist or a hospital for things like suicide prevention. So it is never okay to manipulate somebody to get things that you want by threatening your own life. And then later on, being able to check in with that child and say, I don't think that you really meant that, but let's talk about how it made me feel and how you felt. Remember, correction requires connection. So connect with kids when they're calm and when you're calm, and go back and process events that happen like that. But when a kid is in an extinction burst, it's important for you to go quiet, for you to set a limit and say, it's important that you stop yelling and cursing at me. And as soon as you do, I'm going to start talking to you again. Take away the reward of you paying attention to them. You probably learned this when kids were little, that when they're having a temper tantrum or an extinction burst in the store, you don't leave them, but you turn your back to them. And as soon as you hear them get quiet, that's when you give their attention again. That's exactly what operant shaping behavioral principles look like in action. You want to use these with your children, your pets, your wives, your husbands, your partners. Behavior modification works for everybody. But please remember to keep it simple. Be positive when you're shaping behavior. And make sure that you use a lot of praise. And so when we talk about praise, I've got a couple pages in the book about validation. Kids need validation more than they need love. Kids know that we love them. But validation is like taking a stamp that says valid and stamping your kid's forehead. You are valuable. You are valid. You are worthy of being on this earth. Being able to talk to kids in a validating way is really important, especially while you're shaping their behavior. So these are the 6 levels of validation that I've adopted from DBT therapy. I love them. I highly recommend that you read these and think about your communication when you're talking to your kids and using validation techniques. It's also important to know what kind of a communicator you are. And so I've got the communication style quiz that will put you into one of these categories. Assertiveness being the best, healthiest style. We don't want to use passive aggressive techniques with our kids, communication with them. We want to stay away from yelling and aggressive, but we also don't want to be completely passive and just let them walk all over us. So it's important to stay in your hula hoop and use I statements. I don't like it when you speak to me that way. Please know if you choose to do that again, you'll earn a consequence. That's the appropriate language to use when you're shaping human behavior. Okay, so a little bit about what schools can do. Many schools get behavior modification training. I just got a call from a school that said they were losing their behavior specialist because they're running out of funding. It's very important that you work with those people if your school district has some. If you've got kids who have chronic behavioral problems, they need to have behavioral specialists. Going to teachers and schools that can help you find and connect with clinicians outside of your community when you need more tools. When a behavior modification contract does not work at home, then you may need outside help. But please remember that extinction bursts are very difficult to get through, and depending upon how long or your kid's been doing it, or what their learning style is, you may have to really take a lot of time. I'm talking about months or maybe even years to shape behavior. Schools can also use PBIS, which is positive behavior support systems, inside their schools. If you are a school teacher and you don't know about PBIS, please go to their website and take a look at some of their techniques and sign up to get your staff some training. Okay, I believe that is me being done with the presentation. I hope you enjoyed the way that I taught behavior modification. And of course, my QR codes for the books are right there. And I think, Amanda, you're going to take it away from here, right?
Yeah, coming back in now, Dr. Collier. It's Michelle.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Okay, great. Great job. Thank you so much for all that information. We've got great questions lined up. Just in the meantime, we'll let people know that we're going to give away 2 books at the very end of the session. So if you're interested, hang with us. We've got a Spanish version as well as a standard version. And then we also entertained a giveaway on social media. So we're going to draw the winner for the social media book giveaway as well. So this is how you can keep in contact with Dr. Collier if you've got future questions or want to know more about her book. We want you to know that you can check out Operation Parent Handbook, specifically if you maybe have the handbook already and you want to brush up on content and tips related to what we talked about today. You can go to pages 11 through 21 in the elementary and look at gaming, healthy tech habits, cell phones, social media, all the things that you got us geared up to really think about in our own homes today, thank goodness. And middle and high, you can look at pages 9 through 21 and think about screen time, social media, apps that our teens are using, as well as sexting type of things. All right. So let's get to a couple questions first. How about that? So one person said immediately, can you please go back to what you said about Snapchat and teens purchasing drugs through Snapchat?
Definitely. Unfortunately, what I hear from adults and kids, I always ask in my assessments when they come to me because of substance use, where do you get your drugs? In the past couple years, the number one answer has been through Snapchat, and it's really easy. I had a kid show me how to do it once. He got on his Snapchat and he put a simple question: anybody holding? That's all. And immediately, he got a response back: what you need. But of course, it was like, written in funky teen language, like what you need. And then of course he was able to put in whatever else. He didn't actually do it because he was sitting in my office, but he showed me all of the different teen words that you might use to describe whatever you wanted. And he said to me, but it doesn't really matter, you can literally ask for whatever you want and spell it correctly. It doesn't matter because Snapchats disappear and nobody's going to see it. So I think there are a couple of software things out there that help you track that. But I think it's important to remember to teach kids that the people that they will encounter on things like Snapchat and even Instagram or Facebook, there are traffickers out there that are searching for keywords that kids use. They try to find kids that use depressive or lonely language, and they will search kids on social media and find out where you live from the geolocating tags in their pictures. It's really important to remember to teach kids this, so that when they are learning how to use technology, they'll be able to protect themselves from predators like this. But it's also important to delay use with those things, so to keep them from happening.
It's really frightening to think about like what you can get a hold of on Snapchat, like as you were saying, and if parents want to take a deeper dive into that in particular, they may want to go back and watch our recent webinar with the DEA. Just in terms of even getting a hold of one pill on Snapchat could kill a teenager if it's laced with fentanyl or any other toxic substance. And so that's another resource up on our website that families might want to just take a look at. Scary, very scary to think about, but it's the reality of today and how easily and close someone can get to your teen very quickly and easily using those locating functions. Do you have some tips for us to sort of look at the connections that our teens are making on social media? Obviously talking with them, but actually physically kind of trying to keep an eye on who are they connecting with on the social media platforms, and are there some tips for that?
Well, I think it's important to teach kids about what they might see. They might see negative body image issues that glorify eating disorders, and to let kids know what you want them to do if they see something like that. Important to let kids know that people will most likely ask them for nudes and practice with them ahead of time what their refusal skills would be. Like if some kid asked you for a nude, what would you say? Here's what I want you to say. And you got to start this very young. I mean, I've seen this happen in 4th grade when, a lot of kids get cell phones very, very early these days. And so it's important to remember that, that a lot of times we can't control necessarily what's coming in. And so being able to say, you may have kids that show you like a naked picture, or somebody may send you a link to a pornographic website. Here's what I want you to do. Don't click that link. Come tell an adult right away. But also to make sure that you let them know you might be really curious about this. It might be really, really hard for you to say no. So if you say yes, come and let me know. I'm not going to shame you. I'm not going to judge you, but we're going to make sure that we protect your brain while it's growing and developing.
So I meant to tell you this at the very beginning, but a group is participating in a group watching the webinar, and they wanted you to know that they're halfway through your book. So
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that, you guys. Very much,
yes,
very much.
isn't
Yes,
that
I actually am putting together a neuro whereabouts guide book study. So if you guys want me to offer that to your school or your group, please let me know. And I'm so proud of you for doing that. That's fantastic.
it's incredible, right? We love group watches. So if you're an organization who can put together a group watch, we love that so much. And purchase Dr. Collier's book in bulk. It is amazing. There's so many different things that you can take a look at as a parent and think ahead about, and it's across all ages. So you can get it while your kids are young and use it all the way through. Um, if you have a long commute, the Audible is also outstanding. So I got to give a shout out for the Audible that you could listen to during a morning commute or in the evening, like me while you're doing dishes or things like that. If you need an Audible version, it is actually Dr. Collier's voice
Yep.
on the Audible as well.
Yes, I read it out loud, which means you'll be listening to it for 14 hours. But it's important to remember that you don't have to listen or read all at once. It is a guide for your entire child's neurodevelopmental stages.
That's right. You can go right to the section that you're hungry for.
Yep.
Um, okay, so we have a parent that is new to being a step parent. And so she asked, how would you suggest being consistent with children that are not your own, but you want to have a really great relationship with?
Totally. This is a tough one because, as you know, correction requires connection. So a lot of this first needs to happen with, step parent connecting with kids on a very authentic level, right? Any kind of contrived connection, kids are going to see through. And each kid is going to have their own timetable for this. So to remember that you may not connect with an 8-year-old until she's 25, right? But It's important to be able to try authentically, and then making sure that you're parenting from a T in front of them. And so to be able to have the bio parent be able to say to the kids, you know, this is our step parent. What she says or he says goes, especially when I'm not here, but we parent together as a T. So, but that requires a lot of talking. Now, sometimes it's also really okay to not actually take a disciplinary role at all. There's so much research and books on this. I highly recommend that you find something, but you know, I've had a lot of parents, step parents, be really successful by deferring all of the discipline to the other parent. Now, that may not be comfortable for you, but you got to work that out with the other parent. And especially if it was like a tumultuous divorce or something happened, maybe there's grief involved or death involved, it's really important to remember that just walking in and taking on an authoritarian role is not going to usually ever, win the hearts and minds of kids.
Mhm.
But when to do that can be very, very tricky. So working in pairs is important.
What do you recommend for a mom of a 14-year-old teen who has ODD, no drugs involved at this point, in therapy, but very much disrespectful, lying and skipping school? Um, Although very gifted and talented, super intelligent, does well at school, but the defiance and other things are kind of overshadowing.
So let me first say, if I could give you a hug right now, I would, because your job is about 10 times more difficult than your normal parenting job. I just want you to say that, or I want you to hear that from me. I work with parents all the time who have ODD kids that have just this issue. Your behavior contracting and rewarding and consequencing may be daily. It really, literally may be daily. It's important to have a set thing that you always say to your child. It's not okay to speak to me that way. It hurts. Please stop. If you choose to continue, this is the consequence you'll earn. That needs to come out of your mouth repetitively, over and over and over. Because remember, kids who have ODD, they choose to do the wrong thing purposefully, even if doing the right thing would give them better rewards. That is the nature of oppositional defiant disorder. And it takes quite a few decades sometimes to change. Sometimes it doesn't change. Sometimes ODD follows adults well into adulthood and can result in some pretty negative consequences. So it's very important that you stick up for your hula hoop and say what you're saying is disrespectful. That hurts. Please stop doing that if you choose not to. This is going to be your consequence. And repetitively, I also recommend having a support system. If not the other parent, making sure that you find like an Al-Anon group or a parenting group that you can attend that has that. And also make sure that you find a therapist who will collaborate with you. Because I really can't stand it when therapists say, I can't tell you what I'm talking about with my kid. That's true. They can't, but they do by law are required to tell you what techniques they're using with your child and how your child is responding. And make sure you do some parent coaching. If your child's therapist won't see you for parent coaching, go to a colleague that they recommend and have them sign a release so that you can all work on your child's case as a team. I always tell kids that I work with that have behavioral issues, look, I would love to see you for therapy, but I'm also going to do some parent coaching with your parent. Sometimes that may happen without you in the room, and sometimes you might be in the room, but I'm going to advocate for you as much as possible, but as long as you're following the rules. And so that may work for some kids. Some kids it may not. They may need their own advocate or therapist to really be the person that they talk to, but there still needs to be open communication with the parent for that. So if you're not satisfied with that, make sure that you say, hey, I need parent coaching. Where can I go? That also has some information on my kid.
So I might have heard this wrong, but I kind of interpreted what you were saying as like there's almost like a gravitational pull towards the thing that's more harmful. Like even if you've set up a really strong reward system and there's really good things on the line, it's like their natural gravitation is towards
Being
um,
oppositional. Exactly.
yeah,
That's what
the harder
oppositional
thing.
defiant disorder is. It's kids who just, even though they know, a lot of them are so smart. In the middle school chapter, in the very beginning, I have the gap. Read that page, the gap between IQ and maturity. For ODD kids, the gap is wider. They are smarter and less mature. Because remember, impulse control, empathy, making the right decisions, those are frontal lobe skills, but they are behind. They're not using those as much for whatever reason is going on. Medication, healthy supplements, those can all be bolsters to help with that, because a lot of times kids who have ODD also have some emotional issues as well. These are very difficult kids to parent. As the saying goes, hard babies to hold, but they still need as much praise and reinforcement as other human beings, maybe even more. And so being able to focus on the positives, catching them doing very small things that are good and praising them for it. A lot of times they won't recognize your praise, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't praise. Use all your parenting tools and know that your job is just going to be that much harder and take that much longer. So big hug.
Big hugs,
Yeah.
such big hugs.
Yeah.
When you think of some of your clients that have felt successful, like the teen who has ODD, like when they do something right or they feel a success, can you maybe think of an example that,
Oh my God. Yes.
like, what is, just tell us about that. Like, what is
Okay.
it
So,
like?
well,
Yeah.
about, somebody that I'm helping now, it's very important. This particular kiddo, like F-bombs fly out of his mouth, right? And if he can skip school, he will, or skip class. If he can use weed, he's gonna. And so it's very important. So there's drug testing. Every little thing that he gets is earned. Every little thing. I mean, we're talking door, privacy, peer privileges. And what you usually see is, you've got 3 steps forward and sometimes 4 backward. I mean, that's what it looks like sometimes, is you have lots of regressions. You'll see the learning curve go up, but then as soon as they kind of rest on their laurels, they'll go backwards and they'll regress back into old behavior. But they may need to do that 50 times, whereas another kid may regress 1 or 2 times and they learn. It seems that kids who have ODD, they don't learn as fast, even though they're smart. They still have this kind of invincibility, thinking, oh, the consequence is not. And a lot of times, because they're so hard to parent, parents are inconsistent, which then make the extinction burst worse. So even more important to be more consistent and to really use a behavior modification program that has shorter time limits. Like, so for instance, this kiddo, if he gets pissed and an F-bomb comes out of his mouth, he loses a cell phone for 4 or 5 hours. And so he will calm down pretty quick because he knows that the 4 or 5 hour mark starts as soon as he's calm, right? And so we shape, but that doesn't mean he won't do it again tomorrow, right? Like they just don't learn necessarily as fast, which
Gotcha.
requires more patience on our part. Yeah.
But when you see that they do learn and maintain, that's such a great feeling, and they've got to feel so good about it
Yes.
too, which is the best. Yeah. Okay, gosh, thank you for going on a deep dive there. That was so good. Such good information. What we want to do next is give away 2 of your books. So we have a Spanish version as well as a standard version. So if you would like to be entered to win those, you need to put your full name and your full address into the question section, and we are going to follow up with our 2 winners there really quickly. And then we're also going to do, so I've got a little drawing here for the social media participants who joined us online and shared the webinar. We really appreciate you. And we invite you to stay active in our social media community. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and our past webinars are also up on YouTube. So join us anywhere you can. And we're growing vibrantly, and there's a really family-like feeling in those communities. So I've got the winner from the social media contest. And it is, and we will reach out to you. I hope you're on here, but if you're not, we'll be in touch tomorrow. Oregon City Together. And they participated in the contest on Facebook. So we will look
Oh,
forward
yay!
to
I love
um,
those guys.
getting you your book as well. And along with Dr. Collier's book, our platform is dinging here. Everybody's getting their name in the hat for your book, Dr. Collier.
Oh, good.
Um, Yes, so I was going to say, along with your book, we're also going to send the winners a stack of one of each version of the Operation Parent Handbook as well
Oh,
this
wonderful.
time around. So please enjoy those, and we're happy to get them out. I want to let everybody know just real quick um, about a couple of things going on at Operation Parent. So here is our individual handbook. We have parents, foster parents, grandparents utilizing and ordering our handbooks. We have a Spanish edition as well that we would love for you to know more about. In our elementary, middle, and high handbook, we are covering a lot of topics, drugs, even fentanyl, to help parents ground on what we should be starting to talk to with our teens. As well as ways to boost refusal skills and just a lot of tips about enhancing the conversation. The more you talk about it, the more they know where you stand, and the more they can ramp up their ability to say no and know the cost involved. So if you already have a copy, we'd love for you to go to those presentations that we referenced earlier in the PowerPoint and check out the content and tips that are directly related to the webinar today. We also have a super special offer for just those of you that are with us on the webinar. Um, we have we have lots of people enjoying our handbooks all around the country, and we invite you to hop over to our website, operationparent.org/shop, and look at all the versions available and see which one might be most appealing to you. Our elementary is a newer version. As I mentioned, we've got Spanish, middle, and high parent handbooks. So the exciting thing about today is you can apply the discount to both an individual order as well as a bulk order. So that's 15% off an individual handbook or a bulk order. And all you have to do is go to operationparent.org/shop and enter the code 15 prevention. So it's 15% off for those of you with us, and the keyword being prevention. So if you enter that offer code, you will get your special discount. It's a quick turnaround time, so this offer is only going to be available to those of you that are with us and through March 17th. So you might even consider getting a different version than what you already have in your library, or get another copy and share it as I have with a sister-in-law, a brother-in-law, your teen's best friend's family. Like, this is just an awesome way to think about like protecting the whole tribe. You might also order a copy and share it with a school counselor, and then it could really be able to get out into the community. If you have any questions at all, we've got really caring, amazing community advocates on our staff that can share with you how schools, drug-free coalitions, and churches all over the country are using our handbooks and prevention tools in the community to really make a difference. I mean, we believe so much in our product that we offer free shipping now. And so not only do you get the discount, but you also get the opportunity to not have to pay for shipping, which I know we all love it when that can happen. But most importantly, we hope that you just enjoy our focus on prevention, and what we're really passionate about on our team is making a difference and making stronger families. So I hope you'll take a minute today as we close and go ahead and sign up for the April 11th webinar with Dr. Erin Weiner on marijuana and vaping. And remember, I did mention in the beginning that those seats are going fast. So there may be, that may close. So if you'd like to join us, you want to go ahead and register today. So this has been wonderful. We've really enjoyed our time with you, Dr. Collier, and everyone who's with us. We've had a very large audience, close to 400. So we're thankful for that, and thankful for all of your research and work and presentations that you're doing at schools every other day, and what you're doing to make make life different for a lot of families too.
You got it. Thank you. It's always
Yep.
an honor to be at Operation Parent.
Oh, same here. And so we'll take you up on that book tour webinar we hope to do next. Okay, congratulations on
You got
launching your newest book. All right, everyone. We'll see you soon. Thanks so much.